Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery Podcast. I'm your host, Tersh Blissett. I have alongside me my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And then we also have the fabulous Mr. Nick McDonald. Once he gets to talking, you'll realize that he is just like me. He's from South Georgia, has that wonderful South Georgia accent. And but we're going to talk about business coaching and how to work on three pillars of building your company's culture. But with that being said, welcome to the show, Nick.
Hello. This is my best American accent. I don't think it's fool anybody.
Verbal.
Yeah, I'm working on my American.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit before we get started with the building company culture and the importance of that. Tell us about you, a little bit about you. I mean, we've known each other for a couple of years now, so I don't want to miss over anything as we, talk with our audience here.
Okay. So, well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me on. It's a real pleasure. So I run a business called High Growth Coach, and we really help the smaller businesses. Right? If you're under 1.5 million, we can help you, chuck in the truck, grow to a bigger business. And just help me with the fundamental foundations of business, right? So as you get bigger, things get more and more complex. But what I notice in my journey through life is that certainly the smaller business owners, wear way too many hats, overwhelm, creeps in, and there's forward progress is hard. So what I've done is tried to suck out all the information in my head and put it in a no-nonsense, step-by-step, business portal to help guys just get the fundamental foundational basics. So that's really what I do.
Yeah, it's a really cool process too. It's been a couple of years, so I'm sure you've changed it a lot since I went through it, but it was really cool how it's a step-by-step guide on just do this and then work through this and work through this. So it's a lot of the fear and uncertainty that we have as a service business owner starting out. We just don't know what to do next. And it takes a lot of that fear out of the equation. So that's a really cool process, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's the whole knowing what to do, like knowing where to start. I think that is the biggest thing. So, there's a lot of people potentially aren't clear because they're just so muddled and so overwhelmed. So if you know where to start, and if you start by just listening to your business, then you get a bit of a map. So you understand where you are. So the fundamental way we do things is, where are you right now? Listen to your business right now. What's working, what's broken, what's missing, where I get really clear on that. How well do you know your numbers? And then think about, get clear on where you want to grow to. And this is a big part of what we're going to talk about today. Culture, is what do you see? What's your vision? Why are you doing this? And then just basically map the gap. What is it that I need to do first? So the trick is really to know your business and listen to your business so you can give it what it needs when it needs it, rather than solving future problems, because that's what so many people do. Should I do, high growth? So should I do House Call Pro or Service Titan? Because when I'm bigger, I'll need Service Titan, but I don't want to, learn all that now and all of that kind of stuff. That's a future problem. So trying to help people really get a proper understanding of their own strengths and what they're going to do next. Well, I don't know. It just seems to be massive. And once you've got that kind of clarity, the kind of steps people make forward are enormous.
So with that being said, I love what you just said there about, should I go House Call Pro or Field Edge before I go Service Titan? Because long term, I feel like most people want to be Service Titan, and a lot of that has to deal with acquisitions and stuff like that. What do you tell somebody in that situation?
I think start with what you know. So,
okay.
Really, I think properly understand your business. So how big is your business right now? So I've spoken to people who've got $1 million businesses that are still doing stuff on paper, right? So their need is very different to, well, I've just come out of tech school and I want to start my own business, or, I hate my boss, I want to start my own business. So it depends really upon where you're at. But for me, it's about simplicity. So when you think about, I would compare, websites and software to like a car. So when I very first got mobile, I had a bike, and then I had a motorbike, and then I had a sports car, and then I had a bigger car, and I got a family, and then just now I've just got a truck because I've got 4 kids in the family. So you just move as you get bigger, and your life develops. You get the stuff that you need when you need it. So I think that's really what I would say. Just listen to your business, look at what's in front of you, and just try and keep things simple.
Yeah, I think that's
a great point. Because,
that is so good. Well, Josh and I were talking earlier about this, and Josh, you can go into more detail about it. But we were just talking about how you, with Service Titan, you pretty much need a dedicated person, or you need somebody in the office full time. And even if you're at $1 million or maybe 2 million, you may not have that dedicated person. Otherwise, you could just fall flat on your face. But dive into that a little bit more, Josh.
Yeah, and honestly, so where I used to work, that was me. I was the dedicated person that made all that stuff happen. But if you don't have someone like me, if you're a one-man show, or maybe you have your wife's helping out in the office, or you maybe have one technician, which I know Nick works a lot with people at that point in their business venture and gets them to the point where they have multiple techs and an office staff and everything else. You have to start simple, and I think that Nick is very well known for his laying truths down on the Facebook groups. I love anytime he comments, because there's no sugarcoat, and he just tells you like it is, and whether you want to hear it or not, this is what it is. And so if you guys don't follow him or don't see him on like the Housecall Pro group or Service Titan or some of the other best practice groups, always just add him as a friend and make sure you follow his comments. He's usually very blunt, to the point, in a good way. Yep. Because a lot of times people like to sugarcoat, or they don't really actually give you helpful advice, where Nick has seen it all in his career and will really give you guys some really solid pieces of advice. Absolutely agree with that. I mean, when you see Nick comment on something, just chime in. Usually it's a video comment.
It's entertaining. I like that. I like that it's just click on this video and just listen. It's going to be great. I guess with that being said, Nick, could you get us started in these pillars that you mentioned about?
Yeah, okay, right. So culture is like a multifaceted, huge thing, right? And when you're Chuck in a truck and you're thinking, I need to build the culture of my business, like, where do I start? You haven't got any people, so that's not necessarily, that's not a burning issue, but it is something to think about, like your why. So there's a few things around that. Culture is, when you think about the culture of a football team or a big business or whatever, you think about the leader, and it's really, culture is leadership driven. So it's trying to understand that and make sure that you are absolutely clear as the leader of your business. What is it that you want to build? What are you building? So there's, if you think about what you do, there's what you do, there's how you do it, and there's why you do it. So the what you do, that is your service. That's the stuff that you do if you're cleaning carpets or if you're an HVAC technician or whatever it is. That's the service that you offer. And then the how you do that. Now that is your standards. That's it. That is your service delivery standards, and how you hold yourself to account. And the why you do what you do, that's your core values, your core company values, or your core purpose. And that is really hard to get a grip of. But the why you do what you do, that's really what drives the culture. Because if you can find somebody that is in tune and is aligned with your why, your reason, the reason you want to be in business and that you want to serve and what you want to bring to the marketplace, and also buys into the how, your standards, those two things together really drive the culture. So it's really important, properly important, even when you are chucking a truck, to think about, well, actually, if I'm building a business, a lot of people say, oh, I want to have $1 million business, right? And then when they get into it, it's very different. But if you're wanting to grow, properly understanding why it is that you're doing it, what is your connection to the business, your connection to your customer base and your community, what's getting you out of bed every day. So properly understanding that is key. So as a leader, having absolute clarity on, having a vision and, these are our standards. When it comes to, why is that important? When it comes to recruiting someone, and, I come to because recruitment is a bit of an issue, I think, at the minute, right? Well, it is for some people. If you can't talk freely and confidently about, your future, your standards, your values, your goals, your vision and your mission of your business and where you're going, and you are chucking a truck, then it's going to be very difficult for me to buy into anything, right? Because I might be, as a technician, I might be looking for a career, whatever, and I'm not going to see that. Am I looking for a job? So properly understanding that and taking time to think that through will help you for sure, because it will help you, the culture of your company, and the way that you want to approach your marketplace will help you with your company promise, with your guarantees, and your promise of just really it is the key to what you do and what makes you different. So within those three things, right? So how do I do it, Nick? Well, it is tricky, but there's three kind of things. There's three things to consider. One is empowering your people, empowerment. That's a really key thing. And there's some key things that we can talk about in that. The second thing is, as I've just talked about, understanding, having standards and values rather than rules. Standards and values are more powerful than having rules and systems to follow, because you can hold people to account more with standards and values. And then the third thing is to have like a performance improvement coaching culture, environment where you're constantly, looking for improvement. You're allowing people to fail and all of that. So, there's a lot more to that. There's, when you start building your team, you've got to think about all the different elements of the team, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're thinking about, building a culture in your business, you've got to empower your people. You've got to be clear on standards and values and holding people to account to that. And you've got to have performance coaching.
Nick, at any point, is there a time when it changes? Like sometimes I think back to whenever I was just one guy chucking a truck, and I hired someone and we meshed very well. But then as we grew and I hired more and more people, we didn't mesh as well anymore because it wasn't the same dynamic. And it wasn't the same kind of culture within the business. I knew long-term that that's how I wanted it to be. Maybe I didn't share it properly. Is that something that's common or uncommon, or what's your thoughts on that?
So things change and grow, right? That's relationships change and grow, people change and grow. So and you can drift apart. You can have I want something which is slightly different to what you want, and then that starts to grate. We start to grate on each other's nerves, and you don't have harmony. And the bigger you get, the more difficult that is. So the more forgiving you need to be. So this is why empowerment is quite important, because that's part of that is allowing, trusting. So like empowerment is like trust. Do you trust me to make some decisions? Are you going to trust me and let me fail? Trust me to make a mistake. So as you grow, it is if you have the shared truth around what your purpose is of your business and the goal where you're going, it's a lot easier to stay together. Here's a good way to think about this, right? Especially as you're recruiting more and more people into your business, right? So it's quite hard. A lot of questions I get asked a lot is, I don't really know what kind of people that I need to be recruiting. Should I be recruiting, experienced people? Should I be recruiting new people? How do I even identify the culture? Because I'm not clear myself. And that's quite hard. It's quite hard to put it into words. So this is something that Starbucks did, and I think it's brilliant. And I would really recommend that you do this, right? So we think in pictures, and culture is leadership led. And we used to run a program for trainee managers and supervisors, and part of that training program was think about, so if you're an attendee on the course, on the program, think about somebody in your life that has had a massive positive influence in you. Just think about that one person. You maybe think about that person now yourself. Mm-hmm. I think, well, it could be a manager, it could be a regional manager, it could be a parent, it could be a teacher at school. What was it that who was that person? Can you identify that person, individual? And then draw a picture. But when you draw a picture of them, emphasize the characteristics about them that you valued. So, if I'm a good listener, you might draw big ears. If I do stuff, I'll draw big hands. So when you start to do that, you start to identify what you actually value. So we did this exercise, and then this is the kicker, right? Just imagine, so you've just drawn this picture. Now just imagine if somebody else was asked to draw a picture of somebody that they've, a leader that's inspired them, and they drew you. What would you want them to draw? And then you think about that. What do you want other people to think and believe about you, to follow you, so that you can influence them? And because that, the leaders in your business will they'll form or help to form the culture, because they're influencing people. So as you're recruiting people into the business, especially if they're being promoted upwards, get them to do that exercise, because we think in pictures. It's really, really simple. And then the final part of that is to say, right, now I've drawn, so just say, Tersh, I drew you. The final part of that is that I have to send that picture to you, call you up and say, hey, Tersh, I just wanted to know, did you know that? You really influenced me, and this is why. It's really, really, great. I got to say that during the last few years of my time at Starbucks, I got a lot of pictures. I got a lot of pictures from people. And it's an amazing thing to feel. And it just helps people as your business gets bigger. If everybody's thinking that, if everybody's thinking, what kind of leader do I want to be? What kind of legacy do I want to leave? And if I value big hands, that's action. If I'm valuing listening, am I asking lots of questions? How am I going to demonstrate the values and the standards that I believe in? And so that is quite a good way to get a grip of what your team value, and also to hold themselves accountable to that.
That's a great exercise. Even if you're not necessarily like physically drawing it out, I mean, even in your head, you can start to envision what that looks like, and envision the things that you think are important as you grow your business.
Yeah. See, another thing, and I think one of your guests previously talked about this, so helicopter management. So that is you've got to be really tuned into yourself as well about how you are empowering people, because empowerment isn't giving them a great big long list and breathing over their neck and saying, "Whoa, don't do that! Oh, don't do that!" Right? It's letting go. So that's a big mistake that we make, because as a chuck in a truck, I've got system reliability because I'm doing everything. I know that this works. So if I'm going to transition from what works to trusting you to do something, I'm going to be really nervous, and that's going to make you nervous. So having the ability, and this is a personal thing, to trust you, to let go and allow you and empower you to fail. So there's something that I talk about, which is snowplow parenting or snowplow leadership, because the snowplow clears the road for you, right? But actually, what you should do is, instead of preparing the road for you, you should prepare you for the road, so that you are enabled and empowered to make decisions without me present. So having too many lists and having too many systems and processes, especially when you're starting, you do need systems and processes for sure, but you need to allow your team, as you're growing, to make some decisions within the framework that you give them.
Yeah, I like that. So what I think I hear you saying is create the list, create the guidance, but don't make it so restrictive that they can't make their own mistakes and they can't tweak it their own way a little bit. But what happens if you have someone who uses that as an excuse or a crutch, like, oh, well, you weren't specific enough, so now it's not my fault that X, Y, and Z didn't happen properly?
Yeah. So this comes back to performance coaching, right? The third pillar, really, which is constant reviews. So review, always review to improve. So with that, right, there's a skill issue. I don't know how to do it. You've not told me enough, it's your fault. Or there's a will issue. I do know how to do it, but I can't be bothered, or I'm not going to do it, right? So you've got to first of all understand, is it skill or is it will, and how responsible are you? But then if you have something that's really, really rigid, so here is a 17-page document on how to do a search. Right? We've all seen them.
Oh yeah.
Learn this script off by heart. To start with, that will help you because it gives you a framework, right? But it can be so restrictive that you just get in the middle with it and it stops you from doing it.
Yeah.
So the ideal is, show me what I need to do, allow me to do it, and then review it. How did that go? What went well, and why did it go well? What didn't go so well? What could you try next time? And why is that? So, here is a classic. I talk about this a lot. Let me just get some different colors here. So let's just say I'm talking to you and I said to you, what we want, Tersh, is I want you to go for green. Green is really important. Here's some training. This is how you get to green. Go and get green. And then you go off to get green. And then you come back and it's not really worked out. And I said, what happened? He said, well, I went for blue. Blue is what I went for. I was like, we did training on green, but you've come up with blue. Why is that? What could you do? Now, at that point, the autocratic leader says, just do green. I've told you so many times, just blue. Just do it, right? Are you stupid? Right. But if you're looking to build a performance coaching culture, right, you'd say, right, how did that go? What did you learn? You didn't get what you wanted. What do you think you could do next? And then I say, I think I'm going to go for red, right? Now you've got to allow me, even though it's the wrong thing that I'm doing, you've got to allow me to go, because what I'm doing is I've made a decision to move, to try something different, and that's what you want. You want me to move through discovery. And I then get to red, and then, tomorrow you say to me, how did that go? I said, when I went to red, what went well, what do you think you could do? I could say, I could try green. Bingo. So what I've done is, you've trained me. I've tried it and thought better because I know better than you, right? Because humans do that.
Right.
And I've learned through discovery that green is the answer. And I've found the outcome that I want, that you're looking for, my own way. So, and then I own that. And then you then say, God, that's a brilliant idea. We should do that more often. And then I'm contributing. Right? So I think it is important that you allow people, you give them a framework, and then you review it. So some people are unconsciously competent, right? So I'm good and I don't really know why, but I can't train it. No, I can't train that out. So if I'm a great salesman and I come in and I sell everything, my average transaction value is up, I get great reviews and all of that, but I'm not following your system, don't change me. You have a system and a process for things like that, which is, if I'm coming in and I'm not getting the outcome, my numbers are off, then that's when you bring in the system and say, right, we'll try this. This is the sequence. This is a process you might go to, and you might have to get granular around. Try this, particular phrase, or try this form of words to help me, work that sequence into what I'm doing. So I suppose it's horses for courses, but the thing about performance coaching is that you have a framework and you have regular reviews, and you let the person who's doing the work lead that discussion about what went well, what else they could try, etc., etc.
So how often should we be doing these reviews? Because I could totally see it being possible whenever I have, one or two service techs or installers or whatnot. But what happens whenever I have 15 or 20? Like, that seems like it would take up a lot of time.
Yeah, it would do. So again, it's horses for courses. It would depend. So, if you've got 15 techs, I'd probably split them into two teams and have two leaders.
Roger.
And, you've got one person has a maximum of 7 people beneath them. And they hold each other accountable. So you would work out how you would do that. But, a review doesn't need to be, right, Friday at 3:00, come into my office, I'm going to sit down and talk about your childhood.
Gotcha.
Right? It's kind of more, how things gone. I mean, the whole part of having standards and values, right, the second pillar, is that you would have some non-negotiable standards. So if I'm not hitting those non-negotiable standards, then you're having a regular conversation with me, right? Almost every day until I do. If I'm turning up late, You don't wait 3 months.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's just really, it's horses for courses. And your numbers will show you that. So if you're tracking your numbers, so just say there's three of us, there's you, me, and Josh. And, you know, you're a superstar, I'm not so good, and Josh, you know, is
rubbish.
Don't say that. Then, you know, if you performance board and it says, you know, Tersh has done 100, Nick's done, you know, 50, and Josh has done 10, then you'd have that discussion, you know, and Josh would be saying to me, what do you think Tersh is doing? You know, and we'd come to you and you'd share it. So having a performance coaching culture is you'd have like league tables up and an open conversation about, well, what am I doing? How can I learn from you? It's something not right. I'm trying hard, but I'm just not getting it. So, you know, and if you've got your standards and values right, we're all going to want to help Josh. So we're going to say, right, okay, Josh, let me give you some feedback. Let me help you. So it'll be your team will manage themselves in the end if you empower them to do that, and you've got the right standards and values in place, and you know everyone is coaching everyone.
I like that. I think especially with the current, you know, because we're kind of have like a mix of generations that are entering these companies. We don't have it's not just the older generation in the trades anymore. We're trying to bridge the gap with the newer generation, and the newer generation, which is technically my generation, is needs to be. We value things a little differently, and I see it in the threads all the time. Nick, I've talked to you about this. Tersh, I've talked to you about this. It's the mindset of these owners and managers. If you're listening to this, needs to shift. You guys, it's such a do what I say culture in the trades instead of what Nick is talking about, letting people fail, letting them find their own truth, which most likely will end up being the truth that you told them in the first place. Just like your kids, you tell them don't touch the hot stove, they touch the hot stove and they realize you were right the whole time. It's the same thing, but we have to allow for people to fail so they realize there's a better way to do it and they find that truth themselves.
Yeah. I think when you're looking at that kind of thing and you're trying to build a culture with your standards and values, and you know you're empowering people, and you know we're coaching people, it's having that environment where people are heard. Right? Sometimes I just want to vent. Sometimes I just want to be heard. I'm not going to do anything, but just feeling heard. You know, you've given me an extra 10 minutes and listen to me. That is enormous. That is, you know, I've got to say that is enormous. And you know, when you approach somebody, it's not you're a technician and this is your service technician. I'm going to fit. This is where you fit into my head, into the service technician thing. It's just like you got to look at the whole person. Everybody's got shit that they're dealing with. Everybody's got a life outside of when they're stood in front of you and working for you. So if you can embrace that and understand that and demonstrate that matters to you, then the amount of loyalty that buys you even or is afforded to you is just enormous because you understand it. So I'll just tell you, I don't know how we're doing for time. I'll just tell you this dead brief story. A long time ago, when Adam was a lad, I've been promoted to like a senior department manager in a big clothing store, right? And I thought, this is it. Now people were calling me Mr. McDonald. I'd arrived. And I had a team, and there was a girl in the team called Kelly, and she was a superstar, and she was 16. But every Monday morning, I would have a sales meeting, and she was never there. And I was like really irritated by this because, you know, I was on a mission. I've got my career to get sorted out, and she was a star player, and she was never there on a Monday morning. So on a relatively quick time scale, got to the point where I was disciplining her. I was all over her. And we got to the point where I was going to dismiss her, right? So this was my non-negotiables. This is where you need to be careful with your non-negotiables. And it was like, right, okay, Kelly, you fired. I got somebody in from HR and I wanted to fire her. So you fired. That was it. Had the conversation. And she sat there and sat there. And the girl who I was with from HR had come down, said, is there anything else, Kelly? Is there anything that you're not telling us? Now, this girl's 16. And she said, Mr. McDonald, I am 16 and living at home with my father who is abusing me. And every Monday morning I go somewhere to see somebody help me deal with that. And I was like, oh, what?
Yeah, you feel.
So all I'd done, right? So I'd moved from literally hating this girl and wanting her out of my, because she was standing in my way of what I wanted to do. The first words out of my mouth were, how can I help you? No, I'm so sorry. How can I help you? And then, and like years later, I read Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in there, one of those habits is seek first to understand and then be understood. And that, that is, if you start out with that, I want to understand you, I want to help you, I want, you share with me what you want to share with me. I'm open enough to listen. I'm going to do what I can to help you grow as a person and understand that. And that was a really powerful lesson for me to learn when I was, I think I was 19, 54 now. Still get goosebumps when I think about it.
Yeah. I mean, obviously that made a huge impact on you. For sure.
Yeah.
That's a great story, Nick.
So when it comes to culture, for me, it is looking at your team as don't just compartmentalize them. So people come to you, and like, I don't know, middle-aged woman might come to you as a CSR. If they brought up children, right, they're better organized than you are. I can tell you that now. So just looking at what are the skills that they can bring, and you can trust them. It's the whole empowering them, getting them to buy into your standards and the values that you want, and then allowing them to fail, but making sure you are coaching them and performance coaching them with regular reviews. And going back to your point, Tersh, what you're saying, how often do you do this? Yeah. I suppose if it's brand new, I'm on call by call management, every single call.
Yeah.
And then, after 3 months, 6 months, it's let's have a review at the end of the day. Let's have a wash up call at the end of the day, every 2 days, every month. And let's have a Friday morning, sales call. How did last week go? So it's all horses for courses, but as long as you are reviewing, I think before you trust, you've got to have that kind of system and process in place for your own sanity. Otherwise, you're abdicating responsibility rather than delegating it. And then that's usually.
So would you say you're saying call by call management? We do call by call management now with a dispatcher does the call by call management. You're saying that maybe myself should be doing a call by call management with this one particular person, or are you saying just change up some of the wording in our current call by call management?
Right. If it's working and everyone's happy, then don't fix it. I would never say, if it's, don't try and fix something if it's not broke. Yeah. Working. But if you could improve it somehow, call by call management is a brilliant thing, right? And if it's getting you results and consistent results, and your team are used to it and they like it, because there's a feedback thing as well. So you can catch if I've upset the customer, you can catch that on the call. So your CSR can phone and offer them freebies and all of that, right? So it's the whole debriefing part of that is a great thing. But I think that review. So if you're doing call by call management with me, it's worth having the conversation, right? So the call by call man, this is what I'm noticing. Your numbers are up. When we have the conversation, you're all over it. Do you feel that you need this kind of support? Mm-hmm. Or do you see it that you're breathing down my neck, making sure that I'm delivering service compliance? So, what is it? Are you the big bad wolf watching over me, or are you supporting me and helping me? What's the tone of that conversation? And what does the recipient feel about that? And, what are the results? So, so it's kind of a bit multifaceted because, for instance, going back to, me on 50 and Josh on 10, you want to talk to both of us because we've both got opportunity. But, if you're on 100, I'm not going to necessarily be calling. I might be calling you for some advice.
Gotcha.
You see what I mean? So
I makes sense.
It's all about efficiency. If what you're doing isn't making any difference or big difference, then it's wasted energy.
Yeah, that's the concern that I have there. I don't want to do it just for the sake of doing it, and then it be a wasted energy, a wasted time, especially when you start thinking of 15 or 20 people that you're doing this for throughout the day, then that almost becomes a full-time job in itself.
Yeah. So, I mean, maybe there may be some that you switch to a debriefing call. So, when you're driving to your next job, you call me and tell me, how did it go? What could you have done differently? What went well? Why did it go well? What did you miss? What did you think? What could you do differently? And then you'll pick up with those reviews because that's empowerment. You're empowering me and trusting me to do my job, and I'm going to deliver for you on that. And as long as I continue to deliver for you on that, you can let me off the reins a little bit. But just, I suppose, Tersh, it depends how the call-by-call management makes me feel.
Right. Yeah. It's been there since day one with us. So it's not something that's used to reprimand people. So it's just there. Like, it's what we've always done. But I think that what you said there made some more sense too, is maybe relinquish the reins a little bit, and rather than having to be debriefed before you leave the call or before you get a signature, maybe debrief them as they're headed to their second call or the next call. And so that way they can spend a little bit more time, they can get on the road a little quicker rather than waiting on a debrief.
But again, you're the owner.
Yeah.
Right? So your culture is leadership led, right? So what is it that you want? So, and if you want that level of control is the wrong word, right? I'm not saying you're a control freak, but you're a control freak. But if you want that level of input and they want that, then it's a bit like, this is an extreme analogy, but at some point you stop cutting up your food for your kids. You stop cutting up their food and you trust them to do it. And then they make a mess and your kitchen is covered in beans and sausages and all of that, right? And then you have a coaching performance improvement conversation, and over time they're feeding themselves. If you never do that, you're always cutting up their food. So there's no growth for them.
Yep, absolutely.
So, there's a safety net. And sometimes, as a business owner, the biggest step that you ever took was the decision to be a business owner with no safety net. Like, nothing, I'm going for it. And that is exhilarating and also scary. But, I've heard you say this in the past, Tersh, that's something that drives you. You're interested in that. You want that growth. You want that excitement of growing and doing new things. So is there an element of that for your team? It could well be that for me that I really want that, but Josh wants the call-by-call management. He wants that because it's really helping him. So I suppose it's horses for courses is really what I would say.
Cool. Josh, what's your feedback on that?
This was some super valuable information. If you guys when this episode actually goes on the podcast side where it's just audio, you guys should come back to the Facebook group and watch Nick, because Nick, you can tell he is super, super passionate about what he does. He's all red in the face and his arms are flying everywhere. He's ready to throw down. So, but no, guys, if any of you guys listening are looking for guidance on your business, or maybe you just maybe you don't know if you need guidance on your business, Nick is exclusively HVAC, right, Nick?
At the moment, I am, yeah.
Okay. So if you have an HVAC business, reach out to Nick, have a conversation with him, because I know I have learned a ton from him over the last several years. I'm sure Tersh can agree with that. And I know he's helped hundreds, if not thousands of people just with his comments and some of the groups and stuff about. He's super, super knowledgeable guy. He's been around the block and knows what he's talking about. So that's my ringing endorsement for you, Nick. I'm really glad that we got to have you on the show and see you in your element. You were bringing fire today.
There we go. We've overrun. I'm really sorry. So.
No, you're good. You're good. 100%. Where is the best place for people to get to know you and learn more about you?
Well, highgrowthcoach.com is my website. So I've got loads of information on my blog. I've got some free training in there as well. My program is now shifting it into a membership. So instead of spending thousands of dollars, it's like a few dollars a month. You can sign up for that and have a look at it. So highgrowthcoach.com is probably the best place to do it. And make friends with me on Facebook. That's probably a good thing. So cool, I've said those two things.
Well, I appreciate it. I know Josh appreciates it, and so do our listening audience. We appreciate you coming on the show today. Thank you so much for coming today, Nick.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, if anybody has any questions, wants to connect, learn more about Nick and his entire program, highgrowthcoach.com is his website, and that's where you can connect with him. If you have any questions for Josh or I, feel free to message us. Facebook, Instagram, we're everywhere. And we'll put all that contact information in the show notes. But with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful and safe week. And thank you again for listening to or watching this episode of the Service Business Mastery Podcast. It is a podcast focused on service business owners, managers, and technicians who are considering becoming business owners themselves. I hope the whole goal with this episode and every episode is to help you learn something that you didn't even know that you needed to know. And I hope we were able to do that today. So with that being said, I hope you have a wonderful and safe week. See you.